Hey, and welcome back to Common Knowledge, the show where I take a look at 10 common Magic the Gathering cards and tell you are they any good in the Pauper format or not. I've got to knock a few of these out today, so we're going to really run through them because I spent basically 3 hours making that Secrets of Strixhaven full set Pauper review. I guess I only looked at the commons, but still, that was a lot of cards and took a lot of time. So if you haven't watched that video already, go check that one out. It's very long, and I look at every single common from Secrets of Strixhaven and the Mystical Archive too. Any of the ones that are available or legal in Pauper, even though there are no common cards in the Mystical Archive, there are still some that are of old common cards. So you can see the new designs and we can just talk about them. But this show is about looking at other common cards. So we'll get started with Universal Solvent. It's a single mana for an artifact. You can pay 7 and tap and sacrifice this artifact to destroy target permanent. Originally from Aether Revolt, this has seen a lot of different printings, and it's because it's a really useful limited card. It's just nice. It's a turn 1 play. You don't always have a bunch of turn 1 plays in limited, and you don't even really want a ton of turn 1 plays in limited, but this is one that you can play and then just hold on the battlefield, and because limited takes a slower, more methodical pace, that eventually you'll be able to use this. And destroying target permanent, it's late enough in the game when you have 7 mana that you're probably not using it on a land, even though you could, but you're probably using it on, if there's a really pesky enchantment or a pesky artifact or just a really big creature. I like these kinds of cards. In Pauper, not as much, although it's very clear one deck that could, or one series of decks that could play this, and that's those Tron decks, right? Tron gets 7 mana, 3 for the tower, 2 for the power plant, 2 for the mine. That equals 7. So that's a great way of just destroying a permanent. But at that point, you can just play Scour from Existence, which is the instant that exiles target permanent. That costs 7 colorless. So that's kind of just better. Well, this does let you play an artifact earlier in the game. Yeah, I think you just play Scour anytime that you'd really want to play an effect like this in Tron decks. The only thing I can see where you might not want to play that is like if your opponent is mono black and they're playing Duress or something, like this is a way of getting the card onto the battlefield early, and so they can't discard it from your hand. If they're a very discard heavy thing like Refurbished Familiars and Hopeless Nightmares and things like that, this is a way of just getting it on the table where they can't deal with it. They can't deal with it as easily. So those are potential ideas, but for the most part, Scour from Existence is the one you want. It's an exile effect and not a destroy effect. But I think this is mostly like a limited piece. It is just an artifact you can play for 1 mana that has use cases in the late game. So maybe, I don't know, if you're trying to just get your artifact count up for Affinity for Artifact stuff. But I think you just have better options at that point. Cool card, though. I will end up giving this a 2.9, I think. That might be a little high, but I actually really like these effects. Bloom Hulk is 3 and a green for a 4/4 plant elemental. When this creature enters, you proliferate. That's not terrible, but I don't think that's quite enough, especially when you're paying 4 mana. But it is a 4/4, so the rate is fine. If you are able to blink this in some ways, then you get some different proliferate triggers on it. I don't know. I think overall, cards that proliferate without being able to do anything in the first place, like what is it really proliferating? You have to have other cards that make it work, which I like as a general concept of Magic. I like cards that aren't just completely self-sufficient. That's a little lame when they are. It's very commander coded to have cards that do that, but this is an effect that I don't think is really all that strong when you have to pay 4 mana for it, even when it's attached to a 4/4 body. If you can get proliferates for a single mana or 2 mana with a little effect on it, that's when you get those proliferate Pauper decks that are mostly like blue and black. Those make a little bit more sense. You get a little bit more value when you're spending that little amount of mana for that. But when you're paying 4, even when you get the 4/4, I don't know. Plant Elemental is a pretty sweet combination of creature types, though. Let's give this thing a 2.4, I think. Chain Whip Cyclops is 4 and a red for a 4/4 Cyclops Warrior. You can pay 3 and a red, and target creature can't block this turn. That's a pretty useful effect to just have as an ability. Repeatable ability, by the way, and it doesn't tap the creature to do it. That's pretty nice. It's expensive, though. But it is, because it's an ability you can use turn over turn or multiple times a turn. That's why it is so expensive, because that's a pretty good ability in a number of cases. 5 mana to get a 4/4 down in the first place is asking a lot, especially when this thing doesn't have first strike or trample or something. I'd really probably want to have first strike. The trample is probably less important when you can make them not be able to block. I guess the first strike is also not as important when you can make them not be able to block. Maybe if this had menace, there you go. So you tell one of their creatures they can't block, and then now they had 2 creatures. You say, okay, that one can't block, and now the other one can't block either because this thing has menace. That'd be a little bit better, but it's not a very good card. I wouldn't worry too much about it. This is a I'm going to give it a 2.2, and the 0.2 is actually probably more than the 0.2. A good chunk of that is for the repeatable can't block effect, but it's still not amazing. Path of Anger's Flame is 2 and a red for an instant arcane spell, because we're in Saviors of Kamigawa, baby. Creatures you control get +2/+0 until end of turn. We have seen this kind of effect on a ton of red cards. This one being on an arcane spell. What are the other effects? This isn't like Kindled Fury, right? I don't think so. No, Kindled Fury is the +1/+0 in first strike. What are these other effects called? I can't remember the card. If you remember, throw it down in the comments. But the thing that just gives all your creatures +2/+0 in red. I think it usually costs. Does it usually cost 3, or does it sometimes cost 2? I don't know. Anyway, this is fine. I like these kinds of cards at instant speed because they can feel like a real finisher if you're playing a go wide red deck. There are not as many go wide red decks these days. Go wide is White's territory when it comes to Pauper, and even if you're playing something like Boros, I guess maybe it could work, but White just has enough tools that it doesn't really need a card like this. It has other little ways of boosting the power of your team, and I think you just end up playing those instead. So a card like this doesn't really see a whole lot of play in Pauper, and I don't think it really needs to. Let's go ahead and give this a 2.6. It's still a halfway decent effect. Segovian Angel. I love this card. Segovian Angel is a single white mana for a 1/1 angel with flying and vigilance. It is 1/4 of a Sarah Angel for 1/5 the price. What a deal. Seriously, though, this is actually pretty good. This is, you play this on turn 1. Your opponent probably doesn't have a flyer. Maybe they do. If they're in fairies or something, they definitely have a flyer. But not a ton of decks are going to just be able to have a flyer on turn 1 to stop you. And then this allows you to trigger all sorts of ninjutsu effects if you have any of those. If you don't, this is still something that pings an opponent, and then you get to keep it up on defense. This is a really nice thing to pump up in the game as something that gives you offensive and defensive capabilities. So I could even see a mono white heroic deck using this. Probably doesn't end up using that because it has just other creatures that will get bigger faster. But I do like the idea of something like this loaded up with an armadillo cloak or something. I guess that's Bogles then if you're talking that, but loading it up with an ethereal armor or something to that effect. And then you make this thing really scary. It has no protection of its own, though, outside of just being incredibly cheap. So maybe your opponent doesn't value it as a high value target as much. But the other problem, well, it's not a problem exactly, but there is a Phyrexian. Maybe you already know the name of this card. I cannot remember the name of this card, but it's a 1/2 Phyrexian with flying and vigilance. Swooping Lookout, that's my boy. So this is just better than the Segovian Angel, but it's uncommon. So we don't get this one in Pauper. I think it could totally be in Pauper, but we probably aren't going to see it in Pauper because, you know, we already have Segovian Angel. Though we do see some Angel synergies in Pauper. I've seen one person as part of a Discord of other Pauper players, and I've seen him build some Angel style decks that are pretty cool. Like, not Radiant. I'm typing in Radiant Fountain, but I think Radiant Fountain's the wrong card. This one just gives you 2 life. Yeah, that's not the one I'm thinking of. There's an Angel land. I guess we can look that up pretty easily, right? Land, and then it has the text Angel inside it. Sarah's Sanctum or something. Oh, this is very unhelpful. Oh, this is extremely unhelpful. What? Did we type? Oh, did I just type Angel in there? I guess I didn't get through all the way. There you go. That's better. Seraph Sanctum. There you go. When it enters, you gain a life, and when an Angel enters, you gain another life. So that's pretty good with stuff like Segovian Angel to be able to play these guys pretty early, gain some life off it. There are other cards that care about Angels coming into play, and so many Angels cost a lot of mana. Like, most Angels cost 3 and up, and for it to have a turn 1 Angel can be useful in some of those tribal style decks that will make use of Angel cards. Still doesn't have a ton of amazing places in Pauper, but it does kind of go in one potential deck, and I just like the card. I just like it. I don't know what else to tell you. I'm going to give this thing a 3.4, and I think I'm being biased. I'm pretty sure I'm being biased, but I am going to give that a 3.4. I like the card. Lizalana Bowmasters, 2 and a green, with a furry 2/2 elf archer with reach. Whenever you cast an elf spell, you may have this creature deal 2 damage to target creature with flying. That's interesting. Is this interesting enough to go into your elves deck in Pauper? Like, not in main deck for sure, but if you're going up against fairies, is this a card that's worthy of being put in your sideboard? You are playing and replaying lots of elves in that deck, and to just be able to ping a ton of little flyers like fairies, that's not bad. I think overall you'll probably end up finding other cards to play in your sideboard that are a little bit more effective. There's like a crossbow guy. I don't remember the name of the card off the top of my head. It's in my Bogles deck, but he might not be an elf, but he is green, and he taps and deals 1 damage to every creature with flying. And that card's really good. You'll see that in sideboards all the time. But this, having the ability, like, this could take out Glinthawks. I don't think this is that bad. I think people should probably pay attention to this more if they haven't. I'm going to go ahead and give this thing like a 4.2. I think that's a damn solid card. I wonder. I'm not an elves guy, so you tell me if you play elves. Have you ever considered this card, and will you now? I'm interested. Our next card is Longshot Squad. I thought for a second it was the card I was just talking about. But no. Longshot Squad is 3 and a green for a 3/3 dog archer with Outlast. 1 and a green to tap and put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. Used only as a sorcery. Each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it has reach. I was going to say, it's kind of weird this thing doesn't have reach, despite being an archer. But it gets reach. And I guess that's fine. But then you're paying 6 mana for a 4/4 with reach. And you can't do that the turn it comes into play, so you are giving your opponent a lot of opportunities to either kill this thing or get over with flying damage before this guy's able to get the reach. This guy's just really slow. I love the art. I like the creature types, but I don't think this card is all that good. I'm gonna give this thing a 2 point. You know, unlike Monstrous, you can keep using Outlast on this creature, but Outlast is a sorcery speed only, and you have to tap the guy down. So that's not particularly good. I guess you could use like the guac and marshmallow pizza combo. You could eventually get to the point where you can untap this guy and have infinite mana, so you can make this guy infinitely big. But you can do that. You can do better things with that mana combo than using Longshot Squad for that. So, I'm gonna give this a kind of bad score. I'm gonna give this a. Did I give it a score before? I'm just gonna give it a 2.3, I think, and call it good. Cavern Lampid is 3 and a black for a 2/2 enchantment nymph creature with bestow for 5 and a black. So you can cast this card for its bestow cost, and it's an aura with enchant creature. It becomes a creature again if it's not attached, and it has intimidate, which means this creature can't be blocked except by artifact creatures and or creatures that share a color with it, and it gives enchanted creature +2/+2 and intimidate. Intimidate comes out of the fear keyword, which is a retired keyword that Magic doesn't really use much at all anymore, outside of maybe some fun cameo appearances. But for the most part, we've gotten rid of fear, which it was just blacker artifact creatures. You'd see it on a lot of black cards. And then they made intimidate, which can work for any color, but the intimidate only works for, as you just heard there, the creatures that share a color with it. So on this card specifically, yeah, it's fear, but you can bestow this on any creature, and then that creature gets intimidate, which might affect the colors that it could be blocked by. I don't particularly like this in any way. Four mana for a 2/2 with intimidate was kind of bad, and then having to pay 6 whole mana to bestow this onto another creature is pretty bad. Even if you take out that creature and then this, you still end up getting the 2/2 with intimidate afterward, because the enchantment part, the aura part goes away, and then this just becomes a creature when that happens. I still don't think that's particularly good. I think you're putting a lot of mana into something that doesn't really make all that much of a difference. I sometimes think Theros is just a little bit like Kamigawa, I kind of feel like, with Theros. And I didn't play Theros when it first came out. That was during my Magic break. But when I came back to Magic and looked at some of these Theros cards, I went, man, all these cards just feel overcosted in a way that the original Kamigawa block felt like to me. That you'd look at these cards and go, man, this card sucks for this mana cost. Like, this should cost 1, maybe even 2 mana less than what they're printing here. This is crazy. I'm gonna give this thing I'm gonna give it a 1.9. I really don't like it, and I think the mana cost puts it into trap territory where it's just an actively bad card for your deck. Willow Fairy is great art for sure. It's 1 and a green for a 1/2 flying fairy. That's it. Fairies in green. We see a couple of fairies in green. Mostly older cards from Homeland, so it does have an alternate version. Oh, that's so much worse. Susan Van Camp made both of these, and you know what? You did a much better job with the one with the deer. I like that one. But yeah, this isn't very good. you saw with the even though it's an uncommon card, you saw with the Phyrexian guy that I showed you with the Segovian Angel. You can get 1/2 flying vigilance guys for a single mana. For the Segovian Angel, you can get a 1/1 flying vigilance for only a single mana. I think those are better uses of your mana than this. This is, Homelands was not necessarily the best set. And I think this is a card that shows, this is kind of bad. Still, you had like Scrib Sprites, right? And that was a 1/1 flyer for a single green mana. So you can't just make a 1/2 for 1 mana in green. I guess they figured they needed to make it another. This is bad. It's a bad card. I'm gonna give it a 1.4. And then, do we have one more? I think we have one more. It's Aven Trailblazer, 2 and a white for a 2-star bird soldier with flying and domain. Aven Trailblazer's toughness is equal to the number of basic land types among lands you control. So the best this thing can be is a 2/5. I think you're just getting a generally bad deal off of this. Because if you're in monocolor, you're definitely not playing this, because a 2/1 for 3 mana is pretty bad. If you're playing 2 colors, you're paying 3 mana for a 2/2 flyer. That's also pretty bad. Better than this, but not by much. And now you're having to start to pay 3 or 4 or 5 colors to get this thing to stats that aren't embarrassing, and there just aren't a whole lot of Pauper decks that are playing that many colors, especially when you get to 4 and 5. And if you're playing that many colors, you have your pick of a lot better cards than a white 2-power flyer. Yeah, this is really terrible. I'm gonna give this thing a 1.2. I really hate it. I really, really hate it. We'll do a bonus card and then get out of here. Field Research, 2 and a blue for a sorcery. You draw 2 cards, and then it also has Kicker. Sorry, I probably should have said the Kicker part first. Kicker for 2 and a blue when you play this. So you draw 2 cards regardless, and then if this spell was kicked, you draw 3 cards instead. So it's kind of a divination that if you double divination, you get 3 cards instead of 2. That sucks. That's pretty bad. I mean, I guess it's just strictly better than a divination. But you know what else is strictly better than a divination is a quick study, which does this same effect, but for at instant speed and without the kicker. But I would just play quick study instead, and I don't play quick study either. there's blue has just so many better drawing options when it comes to Pauper. Nice for like a limited format maybe, or like a cube or something really basic. But when you're making Pauper decks that are so specific, you're playing something like, if you want to draw a couple cards in blue, of one mind, that's basically the same card, except if you're playing a human and a non-human creature, like you do in many fairies decks with the ninjas that are humans, this draws you 2 cards for 1 mana. And you're building a deck that specifically can play that. And even when you don't have the right effects, you still have just a divination that you have here. And that's just going to be played so much more than a generic card like this that is fine, generically okay, but if you can play something more focused and more narrow, but you've built it in a way that the narrow thing happens more often, you should play that instead. And we do. So nobody plays Field Research, and nor should they. So we'll give this thing a 2.3, I guess, just for the effect, but it's not a particularly good card. You should play other cards instead. That's it for today. We will see you tomorrow. Bye.